welcome to Uncaged, the official podcast of Broken Arrow Tiger Sports. I'm your host, Greg Spencer, and we are here to talk all things wrestling. And with me today is my special co-host, Coach Rodney Jones. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Greg. Thanks for inviting us on. I've seen your new format here. Been excited about getting here and trying it out.
Absolutely. In fact, last year, the most listened to of all the Aerovision podcasts was the episode with you on it. So we better get you back on more often.
We had Christian Forbes on here, so I'm trying to maybe duplicate that by having Chris Forbes on.
Yeah, the wrestling community is strong. So we got two special guests here with us today. Why don't you introduce them for us?
First of all, just trying to get into the season here a little bit and talk a little bit ahead. The Broken Arrow Open will be next Saturday, November 12th. It's the 31st annual Broken Arrow Open, and we've named it. It's been named in the honor of Joe Zamora and Skylar Holman, two of Broken Arrow Wrestling's greatest champions. And in effort to honor those guys, I thought it would be cool to have former Broken Arrow coach Mike Jones and Broken Arrow Wrestling alum Chris Forbes come on here and talk about Broken Arrow Wrestling and talk about those two guys specifically. So Mike Jones is with us, coached here from 1991 to 2001, assistant coach to Steve Dunlap during those years, and introduce him and let him kind of explain his time at Broken Arrow.
Awesome.
Mike Jones.
Coach, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Is this your first time on a podcast?
First time.
First time?
Matter of fact, I wasn't even sure what it was. I had to go look up a Joe Rogan episode. I've heard of him before.
We're not going to get as many views and listens as Joe Rogan, but we'll do our best. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you guys having us here.
So class of 97, which makes you 1 year older than me. I'm class of 98. You said you had a son that just graduated last year, right?
Correct. Yep.
So talk a little bit about, let's kick things off and talk about your experience in the Broken Arrow Wrestling program, both as a parent, because you got the unique side as being a part of it as a player with Coach Jones, and then as a parent as well.
It's just great. I mean, you guys, like you're doing this podcast right here, are real supportive. The community of Broken Arrow is very supportive, especially wrestling. They get behind the wrestling. It's great to have the tournament to honor these guys that have came through and wrestled. Coach Jones does a great job, both my Coach Jones and both my son, Coach Jones. And as a parent, like I said, the events they get to go to and the competition and just the support as far as the facilities that Broken Arrow is creating and stuff is great for a parent and an athlete. So I'm just thankful I got to be a part of it as both.
Coach Jones, how was this guy back in the day?
This guy was one of the hardest workers I've ever coached. You could tell him to run through a brick wall, and he's going to do it. Things got really tough at the end of our practice. Coach Dunlap, he wasn't a sweet guy in practice. Chris never folded, and just you could work on him so much, and he'd just say, "Give me some more," and stayed after practice and drilled. He did what it took to be a champion. So. If we could have had a room full of those guys, we would have never lost a state championship.
Yeah.
Like father, like son. Real quick, Chris, tell us how Christian's doing. He's at the University of Oklahoma.
Yes, he's at the University of Oklahoma. He's redshirting this year, needs to gain a little bit of weight, but still up there, very competitive, loving it, enjoying it, doing real good in school and wrestling. We've also got another Broken Arrow alum up there, Jared Hill.
Sure.
He's doing really good, too. He's actually going to the Michigan State Open this year, this weekend. So, and also, real quick side note, Coach Jones, Mike Jones over here was one of the hardest.
For sure.
One of the hardest working coaches. I remember seeing Joe Zamora. He would work with Joe every day after practice. Then it was my turn every day, and I'm not talking live. We're talking drilling and wrestling, which is really tough on your body. And then he worked with Skylar after he left. So always thankful for the time that he put into not just me, but Joe and Skylar and all the other guys.
Yeah, you guys work so hard all year round, wrestling program and all the success it has. But Coach Jones, talk a little bit about how the preseasons went for you guys coming off last year and what you guys are doing to get ready for this year.
Preseason went great, leading up to, October 1st, and after fall break, we kind of get in the room full time and get after it. Adjustments from one year to the next. Obviously, one group from one year to the next group is going to be a different group, so you're always trying to figure out what that specific group needs. And we have over 70 freshmen through seniors right now in the high school room, and I think we really laid the foundation leading into the season, how things are going to go and the level and the standard that we expect from them as far as their attitudes and how hard they work and things like that. We had a mixture of running and lifting weights and a little bit of wrestling until we got into the full practices, and now we're kind of full steam ahead, looking forward to our first competition, the Broken Arrow Open.
Who are some guys that you are excited to see step up this year?
Well, once again, balance is the word. That we're never a young team, we're never an old team. It seems like we always have a good balance of seniors, juniors, sophomores, and every now and then, especially here lately, maybe one freshman, but not too many freshmen. We have a good group of seniors coming back. State qualifiers: Caleb Collins, Ethan Rodriguez, Andrew Lawless, Cooper Cook, and then a couple other state qualifiers. And Cadence Roop has done a good job. Garrett Stinchcomb, Jacob Brammer, those guys were pretty much full-time starters last year, and we're looking forward to them growing from that 1 year of experience. And competition is really good in 6A Oklahoma wrestling right now.
Always, yeah.
And last year's results are not what we like to see, and I think the guys have bought into wanting to improve and wanting to get better and wanting to put ourselves back up there towards the top.
Now you mentioned Christian. Who else did you guys lose off last year's team? I think Eli Hines, right?
Yeah,
Won a state
Hines
championship.
was the program 78 state champion.
Wow, that's awesome.
He's at Central Methodist, I believe, now with his sister Allison. Christian, then you had Jordan Cullors, who was a 3-time finalist. Parker Whitcraft was on that team last year. So every year you lose, 5, 6 seniors, but then the next year you have 5, 6 seniors, 4, 5 juniors, and a few sophomores, and it seems like that's kind of the balance that we have. And so we're just looking forward to seeing. You start every year with the group that you have, and you want to make that group the best that they can be. The thing about it at Broken Arrow is that a lot of times if you can make that group the best they can be, then there's potential for them to be the best in the state.
Yep.
And so that's what you worry about first, is just making that group and this group the best they can. And they're working hard and super excited about getting into the season and seeing what they can do.
So you're about to kick things off. You got some exhibition matches coming up on November 8th next week. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, first time ever. The program's, obviously extremely healthy. And we're in a situation where we're going to have like an intramural type of event where we're going to have some exhibition matches, meaning teammates are going to wrestle teammates. And we're going to match them up. We're going to match, if a potential starter at one weight is going to wrestle a potential starter at another weight, because I want to put them in the middle and let them get some of that experience and see where they're at. But program-wide, the junior high, the middle school is 80 some odd strong right now, so there's plenty of junior high kids we can match up and wrestle. Obviously, the high school is we have plenty of guys that we can match up. We're going to include the girls program and also our youth program, the Broken Arrow Wrestling Club, which has over 100 kids registered for that. So it's going to be just a night of Broken Arrow wrestling, get everybody together, very informal, throw some mats out there, and have some exhibition matches.
Well, you mentioned both the lower levels of junior high down to the youth program as well, and that's where it all started. Coach Jones, talk to me. Coach Mike Jones here. You've been here for a long time and probably helped start a lot of this stuff. Talk to what makes Broken Arrow wrestling so successful in terms of any successful program, whether it's football, wrestling, whatever. You got to have a successful youth program, junior high. Why has Broken Arrow always put an emphasis on that stuff?
Well, in '91, when I got here with Steve Dunlap, this guy, Steve Dunlap, was a great administrator, great coach. One of the things he started was Monday Night Wrestling, he called it. And we would come up there. We'd have the high school guys come up there, and the junior elementary practice would be going on, and we would have the high school guys just infiltrate with them and help get that program going. Little guys love the big guys. They thought they're like, these guys are 30. They're so big.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Looked up to them, and ever since then, man, we have had great numbers. And I can't believe there's 100 kids out for elementary. That is so awesome. And I wonder what percentage of them are girls nowadays, but That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Quite a few girls.
Yeah, that's awesome. But we had a great elementary program back then. You're right. If you got a great elementary program, feeds into the junior highs, and then you got some guys coming up to the high school that a pretty good experience. So we've always had a great elementary since Coach Dunlap got here, and I'm sure Coach Harlow had one going back in those days in the '80s also.
And Coach, what do you do to continue to put an emphasis on that every year in your program now?
Just understanding the importance of having a strong youth program, and then being in a place like Broken Arrow and the history of wrestling in Broken Arrow and the community in Broken Arrow. It's not too difficult to get 100 kids in Broken Arrow to come out for wrestling at the youth level, and that was established, during the years, with Coach Jones and Coach Dunlap, starting when Coach Dunlap came here in 1991, and Broken Arrow was a successful wrestling program before then. I mean, our first state champion was Bud Gaynor in 1967, and then you had a bunch of legendary coaches prior to Coach Dunlap. Bill Harlow, he mentioned Bill Harlow, Dick Turnbull, a number of other great coaches, and then it was it was definitely the arrival of Steve Dunlap in 1991, along with Coach Jones, that they really kind of set the standard and moved the bar up, and we're just trying to live up to the expectations that they set.
So, Chris, what made you, as a class of '97 grad, come back to BA and raise your family here?
Well, to be honest, like I said, the support from, the coaches, the administration, and just, my love for Broken Arrow and the Broken Arrow Tigers. I remember we were talking about, the youth and all that. I remember we'd be getting ready for a duel or something, and you see that empty mat with youth guys just lined up watching the duel. You remember that, Coach Jones? They would be lined up watching the duel, watching these guys and being like, okay, I want to be the next guy, which is why I'm excited that, Coach Rod Jones was talking about the next crop to come up. I'm going to transition from a wrestler to a parent. Now I'm going to be a fan, and I'm going to come watch these guys and support them, because there's always someone that's going to step up. You lose guys every year, but Coach develops these guys, and there'll be some other guys stepping up.
So, Coach Jones, talk to us a little bit about what you guys coming up next weekend. You mentioned the tournament earlier, but give us a little more detail on that.
The Broken Arrow 31st annual Broken Arrow Open. I can't believe it's been around for 31 years, Coach. And that's our first competition of the year. It's a big competition. We get guys from all over the region to come in. We're looking forward to another big tournament this year. We've named it. It's been named. I don't know when it was first named, in honor of Joe Zamora and Skylar Holman, but that's the name that is on it now. And we're very grateful to be able to remember those guys and to attach and name the tournament in their honor. And if you look back in 1991 with Coach Dunlap and Coach Jones, and the creating the beginnings of the Broken Arrow Wrestling dynasty, if you want to call it that, began with Joe Zamora. Joe Zamora in 1994 was Coach Dunlap's first state champion, and in 1996, Skylar was Coach Dunlap's second state champion. So those guys were instrumental in developing and starting, the tradition that we have right now.
So obviously, Coach, you talked about, this tournament being named in their honor. Chris, tell me a little bit about your relationship. You said you had a relationship with both Joe and Skylar. Tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique perspective. I was teammates with both back then in Broken Arrow. They didn't really allow freshmen to just wrestle on the team. So I had to, the first one was Sagely, I believe, and then I came through, and it was kind of hard just to even get me on. So I got to be a teammate with Joe Zamora his senior year. Great guy. I always knew Joe. We worked out together. I got to work out in the room with him and everything else. But for me to be a teammate with him was great. And I think later on I'll probably tell you a funny story about the state tournament when I was roommates with Joe. But Skylar as well. Skylar was a little different. I wrestled with Skylar my entire wrestling. We wrestled together through youth all the way middle school, all that stuff, which is what brought Skylar to Broken Arrows, because my mom was like a second mom to him. His mom Tina. We were close with him and his father, Kyle, but my mom was like a second mom to him, and kind of brought him into Broken Arrow because of the opportunities that Broken Arrow had, and, to further his wrestling career. And we were already pretty much brothers. So super close with both of them, teammates with both of them. Loved them, missed them. Unfortunately, I actually Worked out with Joe. We worked out, had wrestling mats in my garage. We worked out the day he had passed away in that car wreck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Mike, so obviously you coach both of these guys. Tell us a little bit about them.
Both very hard workers. Joe was kind of I'd say a little bit of a different body style. I bet the guy was probably 5'1".
Yeah.
And I think he finished wrestling at 130. So, man, he was a powerhouse, so quick.
His thighs were crazy.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, back I'm trying to think how old I was back then, but Coach Dunlap would, hey, Jones, you need to get in there and work with Joe. And, life matches, I'm almost 40. What are you talking about? So those guys, man, they were tough. I was having to scramble back then to stay up with them. And then Skyler comes along a few years later. I am 40, and I'm working out with those guys. Talk about tough guys.
Keeps you young, yeah.
It makes you respect them. When I got into coaching myself, you look over at Coach Mike Jones, and it makes you really respect, that he went in there and did that, because he did the same thing with me, and I'm like, golly. So
yeah, I remember I'd come out with Skyler, and that guy, he was going 100%. I don't care if it's Coach Jones and he's 40. I'm going to kick his butt. So he's in there. I got bruises all over me. I come home. It's just like our wrestling days. I got a busted lip. I got a black eye. Got a chipped tooth. I mean, this guy wasn't holding back at all. I was finally would look over at Dunlap like, please don't call on me today. And Jones, get out there and wrestle home. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's the one who put me in retirement pretty much.
He was little, but he was super strong. He had that
strong.
Little skinny man strength. He was very strong.
I'm a former coach myself. In a prior life, I was a basketball coach, and I probably, I kept playing with him until my early 30s, and the feet injuries finally took their toll on me. I had to call it quits and shift careers. But that's much safer than wrestling with with kids these age. Coach Jones, what else you want to talk about?
One of the cool things about Joe Zamora and Skyler is you're talking about, two guys that came into wrestling in different ways, almost total opposites. And Coach Jones was here and he can talk a bit about how Joe got started, but Joe didn't get started in wrestling until later, until he was in high school, whereas Skyler was in the Oklahoma wrestling world pretty much from a young age. 6-time elementary state champion, 6-time Tulsa national champion, 3-time junior high state champion, outstanding wrestler, 2-time high school state champion, 2002 or 2000, I believe he was ACC champion and wrestled for the University of North Carolina. Yep. And then he ends up wrestling for Oklahoma State University and was a Big 12 champion and NCAA All-American at Oklahoma State. So he had years of experience and was a champion wrestler, but Joe started, Coach Jones, you said eighth grade, ninth grade year?
Ninth grade, I think he came to town in ninth grade, right, Chris?
Yeah. Foster family, Robert and Rosie Rivera brought him out here when they came to do a ministry for Arema.
And he shows up in the room one day, and I'm like, wow, look at this guy. We need him. Well, he'd never wrestled before. He started actually in freestyle. And then I don't think his first match was till his sophomore year in collegiate. That's totally unheard of. There's guys wrestled their whole life and don't place in state. Mm-hmm. This guy wrestled 1 year collegiately. The next year he took second state. His senior year he wins state. Wow. And he had to beat some really tough guys.
And it was
to get in there.
It was kind of uncanny with Joe. They're kind of opposites, Joe and Skyler, a little bit. With Joe, he was just so talented athletically, everything. I mean, I remember they had the piano because the Stevens family was the ones he stayed with when he came here. Richard Stevens and all them. And that's Tony Stevens. Yep. And he could play the piano off ear. And same with his athletics. You showed him a move, he could pick it up like that. He was just so talented as far as that. And Skyler was a little bit different. Skyler was lanky, long, but he would work real hard. And they both had the same winning mentality, but one was just super, super talented. And they were opposite off the mats too. Me and Coach Jones would call Joe Rico Suave. We call him Rico Suave. He wanted to look good and the ladies and all that. And
heck of a dancer.
Yeah, Skyler was really, really big on his religious beliefs. He was real strict on the mat, off the mat. Great kid, had a great sense of humor, always kind of trying to play little tricks and games and stuff. Remember his little cackle laugh Skyler would always have, and he would always play like little pranks and stuff on people. But they were great, opposites on the mat and off the mat.
Greg, this is an era when with Coach Dunlap and beginning with Joe and Skyler, that Broken Arrow wins 4 straight championships in a row, 3 dual state championships. So in a 4-year period, there's 8 state championships up for grabs. They win 7 of those 8.
Wow,
And
that's
nationally ranked every year. I think even one year finished as the national champions during that time period, and produced numbers of state champions during that era. Brandon Tucker was a 4-time state champion. Branson Phillips was a 2-time state champion. The Phillips brothers, Branson and Neal. The list goes on and on of great wrestlers that Coach Jones and Coach Dunlap developed at that time.
Tell me a little bit about the format of the BA Open. How many teams are going to be in there, and kind of how does the tournament work?
The BA Open is just an open tournament. It's bracketed format. And last year, I think it was because of the post. It was the first year after the COVID season, and we just got us into a situation last year with the facilities that we have and the number of mats that we can put down, and how we do registration, but pretty much the same way everybody else does. But our numbers jumped to over 900 participants, and we weren't as prepared for that as we probably should have been. So we've made some adjustments going into this year's tournament, and understanding that we can't let that happen again. So we're going to limit the number of entries to 700, which is going to be, more than manageable. But it's the first time out of the gates for pretty much. I think there's some open tournaments going on this weekend, but next weekend is pretty much opening week for Oklahoma high school, Oklahoma wrestling in general. And you'll have a number of state champions from all over the state and in every class, because it's open to every class. And I mean, Chris has grown up into it, and it's a very competitive. It's a good tournament.
It's more of an individual thing, right? Than
Absolutely individual. Yeah, it's just trying to get as many. So we have 70 guys on our roster right now, and I anticipate all 70 of them wrestle next week.
Wow.
And obviously can't do that if it's a team competition, because in a team competition you got to put your best 14 out there.
Well, the good news is you ought to be able to expand this thing even more here in a couple of years, right? We want to talk a little bit about this facility we broke ground on. It's coming up. It's going to be pretty special.
Just being patient, and making sure that we focus on what we need to focus on right now. But absolutely, if you don't know the activity center that is being built over there,
it's hard to miss right now.
To the varsity training center is going to be second to none. I know the University of Iowa is building a new wrestling facility, and this is not just a wrestling facility. It's going to be, for the entire district, every student in the district. But the wrestling portion of the facility, Iowa's building a facility right now, and they're pretty excited about that. But it's nothing going to be compared to what eventually the wrestling room that eventually gets built over there in the activity center.
So how will the size of it and the things that you guys will be able to do, how will that change being able to do things like the BA Open, maybe get some other, prestigious tournaments from around the country? What's that going to be able to do as far as game changes? And then it's not even just in terms of like a wrestling thing. That's great for the community if we're able to get some of those events, right?
Oh yes. It's going to be great for everybody. Well, at Tiger Fieldhouse right now, which I love Tiger Fieldhouse, I think it's a great place to compete, and our facilities are great. But you're limited.
Yeah, you got lots of
space.
Practice space, but not much in terms of floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in the activity center, you're going to have the ability to put down 8 full-size circles, full-size mats, and run a tournament only on the main floor. Compared to how we do it now with the Broken Arrow Open, we'll have to have some competition mats in our practice areas just because the space is limited. You won't have to worry about that problem in the new facility. And it also is going to give us an opportunity to maybe entertain thoughts of developing some sort of regional, national type of tournament where we can invite some teams from all over the country to come in and compete. Just the way things are growing, like I said, once football is done, and I hope they go the distance, and it takes forever for those guys to join us, but we may be pushing close to 90 wrestlers in our high school room on a day-to-day basis. And then when 7th and 8th grade football gets over with, that middle school program is probably going to be pushing close to 100 kids in the room. And then obviously the addition of our girls program doing so well and growing so fast, the space is needed, and we're looking forward to it.
All right, before we wrap things up today, how do you want to end this show today? What else do we need to talk about? What do people need to know?
Nothing that you don't already, that we're not already talked about. Just the upcoming season and the program and the wrestling community. Very grateful that these guys came out today, Coach Jones and Chris, and joined us and told some stories about just, you said you still had a story about Joe at the state
we need to
tournament.
circle back on that one, right?
Yeah, and I can kind of say something from the family's end as well, and this will kind of piggyback off the Broken Arrow Joe Zamora tournament, Skylar Holman tournament. Is that an interesting fact that this year in the tournament they're going to have Nicholas Zamora, which is Joe's nephew, is going to be in the tournament. He's coming in from Texas. Cool. They're bringing a team, and then Skylar Holman's nephew, Lane Holman, will be in the tournament as well. So they'll both have, for the first time, family members kind of competing in that tournament.
Very cool.
It'll be pretty cool, and the families wanted me to kind of tell everyone thank you, Broken Arrow, past, current, for kind of reaching out to them and keeping their memories alive, and just letting them know that Joe, when he came here to Oklahoma, the wrestling family kind of embraced him, and they're extremely happy for that, and they really kind of take that on, because it was kind of a rough upbringing for Joe and them, and then Skylar, their family just wants to say, they're very thankful as well. So, and they'll be here, to watch the tournament and all that. So that'll be pretty neat, and very thankful. And on that story with Joe, I'll kind of be real quick, but I was a freshman. Joe was a senior, and I remember he was in the state semifinals. You'll remember this, Coach. He's wrestling a guy really, me and Coach Rod Jones know real well, a guy named Gable Sullivan there in the semis. Sure. And I'm sitting here, and another guy, one of our teammates, Levi Bonner, was there, and we're watching, and I'm in the stands, and they're in overtime. And I'm like, oh, man. And Levi turns to me. I happen to be rooming with Joe, and Levi goes, if Joe loses this match, he's going to take it out on you. I'm like, oh, man, I'm really cheering hard now. I'm like, come on, Joe, you got to win this match. And he pulled it out in overtime. One's up, I think, I don't know if he won that year or he lost. I think he won that.
I think he won that.
He won that year because the year before he lost to Henson from Lott. Henson wound up being a three-time NCAA All-American. Actually,
Iowa State.
Iowa State, yeah. So, but it was. I was already cheering, but I was cheering even harder when Levi goes, if he loses, he's going to take it out on you. I was like, oh no, he's got to win this one. But yeah, that was just kind of a little funny story about Joe. And
I got to jump on this story. Levi was kind of a different dude, and Joe, they were close buddies. We were at the Spalpa tournament one year, and one of our other guys, Shane Deal, he comes up and he's got a big rip in the crotch of his singlet. Like, oh, what are we going to do? Well, heck, I grabbed the singlet, and I go up to the front office. Hey, y'all got a home ec class?
Oh, wow.
They said, yeah. So I go down there, and they call down there. This real sweet teacher grabs his singlet and sews it up, and I come back back down to the gym. The guys had been stretching, getting loose, and we look up, and it's like all HE double hockey sticks has broke loose. Levi and Joe had gotten into a fist fight right there in the middle of the mat over arguing and warming up. But they're best friends. That's what best friends do sometimes in wrestling. They get into a fist fight. Shows love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the few sports where you can get away with that sometimes, since the object of the sport is to technically battle. Yeah, very interesting.
Well, and Skylar, he was very kind of reserved, quiet, but he went into MMA after wrestling.
Oh, really?
Actually, Bubba Flores, they were competitors. Bubba Flores actually brought him over into
Sand
MMA.
Springs.
Yep, Sand Springs with Team Extreme is the name of it. And I remember he was bugging me forever, and I went and watched him out there in Oklahoma City, and he always was fond of that. For him being so kind of, you would never unassuming and meek off the mat, but on the mat he was one to rip your head off. He was like Coach said, he did not hold back.
So, Coach Jones, any last things as far as some stuff that you want to highlight on your upcoming schedule besides the two things we mentioned, some home events that you have coming up or anything?
Once again, we put together one of the toughest schedules in the state. January is going to be extremely tough. We're limited on some home dates this year, but the teams that we have coming are going to be extremely tough. Stillwater comes to town on December 1st. That's
always a good
opening match. And then we'll end the season with Edmond North right before we kind of get into the preseason. And if you talk about Stillwater and Edmond North, you're talking about probably two of the front runners, favorites in 6A wrestling. So we're looking forward to getting our guys into the competitions they need to get into and get battle tested, and so they're ready for the postseason and to be able to wrestle their best when they need to wrestle their best. And just grateful that these guys are, came on here and talked about Joe and Skylar. And one of the big reasons is I want to be able to, have my guys, my current guys that are on the team right now, be able to maybe go and listen to this and hear the stories of the history and the tradition that was started long before that they got here, so they can understand, the expectations that they need to continue to live up to. So just super happy that you guys came on. Thanks for coming, and looking forward to a good season.
Awesome. You guys always do a good job keeping your fans up to date on social media. Talk a little bit. Tell us about the accounts that people can follow BA Wrestling.
The BA at BAHS Wrestling is our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram handles. So we try to keep those.
We'll put that up on the screen as well so people can find it.
Yeah, we try to keep those updated as the year goes on with just, announcements, promotions, letting people know how the program's doing, how the kids are doing, and things like that. Our junior high program is BAJH Wrestling, and we try to keep that updated throughout the season just to keep people informed on everything that's going on, because there's a lot of stuff going on in Broken Arrow Wrestling.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's all the time we have for this episode of Uncaged. I'd like to thank Coach Rodney Jones, Coach Mike Jones, and Chris Forbes for joining us. Be sure and follow at BA Tiger Sports on all social media platforms to stay up to date. We will see you next time.